Welcome back to Q&A with SNA. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Shane.
And today we're so lucky to be joined in our podcast studio by award-winning author and consultant, Dr. Jackie King. Welcome and thank you for coming on Q&A with SNA today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, before we started recording, you were having a chat with Chelsea about a big trip that you've just done, and I want to start with that because trips are always fun to talk about. So let's put our questions to one side for a moment and let's talk about the big trip.
Well, the big trip was a month sojourn in Italy.
Amazing.
Which has really been 20 years in the making because
Okay.
It's been that long since I was last in Italy.
Yep.
And I did Tuscany at that point in time and always wanted to go back.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that's not so easy to do as
Yeah.
life moves on. And so I decided to invest some resources and time into myself after a very tumultuous few years and to give myself the time and the space to think about what I wanted in this next phase of my life, which is very much caught up in the work and some of the things we'll talk about today.
Yeah. So we'll backtrack a little bit now to 20 years ago. If you were in Tuscany 20 years ago, what happened between then and now in like the
In 25 words or less? 25
Yeah.
years in 25 words or less? Okay.
What took you back there? What were the tumultuous things?
Over the last few years?
Yeah.
Oh, a complete shift in how I put myself out into the world. I published a book last year, which was a similar amount of time in the making, actually, which was all about design thinking and identity and taking a business framework and applying it to the personal. And the particular context I was operating in or that I was applying that business framework to was rebuilding my life after a divorce.
Yep.
But actually there were lots of other lenses that I used in cultural lenses, gender lenses, that I used in trying to understand myself through the design thinking process. And the big question I was trying to solve was how do I reconcile all the different parts of my life for a consistent narrative in how I put myself out in the world. So this Italian trip was pretty much the end of that process for me and that part of my life.
Yeah. So what did you do when you were in Italy that helped you come back to Australia and
spent a lot of time outdoors, watched a lot of people, listened to a lot of conversations, saw a lot of beautiful art and listened to some amazing music, all of which, you know, I think that brings out the shared humanity in us, looking at those things and certainly brings out emotions that you might not be aware of. And so I just was, which you don't really get the chance to do when you're a single mother of three very active and demanding children. They're not children. Two of them are adults. I've only got one at school now. But yes, they'll still
always
all-consuming.
be your children.
They're always your babies, 100%.
Yeah.
So it just gave me some time to reflect a lot about them and how I run my household and the guilt that you feel when you say no and the way that we just pick up all the slack because there's no one else to do it. So that part of my life is over in no uncertain terms. But also in terms of my career. So I've spent a long time in the tertiary sector and in leadership, in the leadership space, developing leadership programs, particularly for women. And the multicultural and social cohesion space and supporting underserved populations in a whole range of different ways, including designing programs, which is how I came into design thinking in the first place. And, you know, thinking about what I want for myself in terms of the difference I want to make rather than the money that I need to earn. And so that was a big win.
And I'm just curious, the kids survived without you?
Well, I did have my 19-year-old daughter with me for a little bit. I was away for a whole month, so I spent half of it with her. She's studying in Florence at the moment.
Oh, nice.
And my youngest was with his father, and my 22-year-old was very happy to be in charge of the dog and be left to his own devices.
And the house didn't burn down.
It was actually
and the bills still got paid.
100%. I paid a few of them from overseas, but that's okay. And everything worked out fine in that regard. Yes.
I think it gives us a pause to realise that things will go on 100%. Even if we're not like actively doing things every day, doesn't it? And sometimes, and we've talked about this, you and I have talked about this in a very long conversation we had as we first met, but the mental load of being a mum and being a business person and being, you know, a writer and all of those things, it is hard to let go, right?
It's hard just not to feel guilty.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I've come back and I've told some of my friends that, you know, I'm running my house differently from now on. I'm holding them accountable. I'm holding myself accountable as well for myself.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, oh, to do that. Like, yeah, we all need to do that. We all need to do that. Dads as well, not just mums.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and, you know, if we're there, it's human nature to just take advantage of it. And so, you know, there's an accountability gap, I think, that occurs as our children are staying at home longer and longer as well.
Yeah. Accountability gap. What are the specific things that you said to your kids that, like, this is not going to happen again? These are the things that I'm not going to be doing, or is there a list of things?
There is a long list. I'm not going to share all of them because they might get a bit upset. But broadly speaking, it's about them wanting to be adults in parts of their lives and then not being consistent when I'm around in terms of the slack that I'll pick up for them.
Yeah.
You know, so it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
If you're going to be an adult, you have adult relationships, you have adult jobs.
Yeah.
You need to be an adult at home as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty much the essence of it.
Yeah.
And I need to not feel bad about making.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
that was the bigger learning. It wasn't the learning.
That might be harder.
Yeah. It wasn't the learning about what they should or shouldn't be doing. That was obvious to anybody. The learning was about actually looking after myself and making myself a priority and holding them to be consistent in the way they approach things in the world.
Yeah.
So there's a discipline for you too in that respect.
It's actually the biggest discipline is for me.
Yes.
There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah. How's it gone so far, 2 weeks
I'm really proud of myself. I feel guilty, but I'm smothering it.
Yeah. I think.
And they're responding actually.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the tumultuous things, because you and I have talked about this as well before, that sometimes things slap us in the face and we then move, you know, in different ways with ourselves. As much as you want to talk about it, because obviously this is a podcast and people are going to be listening, so I don't expect you to talk about things that you don't want to talk about, but you've written a book since then, and there's some things that you obviously want to share with the world about how things were and what you want to do differently. So tell us a little bit about it, as much as you want to.
So I think divorce is a huge thing in anybody's life, or there's lots of stories and evidence and data around the impact that it has on women in particular, in terms of caring responsibilities, in terms of financial disadvantage, in terms of limited career opportunities and trajectories, especially outside work hours and the need for part-time casualised work. And so all of those things obviously have a huge tumultuous effect on an individual who has their own professional ambitions and is capable and wants to work. Not everybody wants to. So it's, you know, up to each person depending on their circumstances. So that was 8 years ago. And I think probably since then there's been a series of tests and iterations, if you want to use design speak, to see what works for me in my professional life, and they've not all been successful. Some have, and I've managed to do everything I've needed and almost wanted to do, but it doesn't mean that it's felt right, and it doesn't mean that I haven't felt incongruous in terms of a flow. So actually I'd say the biggest tumultuous element is like not feeling the flow, like doing what you need to do to get by and not having the opportunity to actually think about what is seamless and what brings you joy and what it is that connects all the parts of your life so that you are I'll say flowing entity. I don't know if you understand what I mean by that, but that you feel like you're in the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right things, and you're mindful and you've got moments of joy. And so that has been quite difficult to achieve over the last however long. And, you know, having ageing parents, dealing with children, dealing with relationships, all of that, and then not even in the workplace, and managing people. Like really managing people is really difficult when you're dealing with your own challenges, and that's part of the premise of the book around having empathy for yourself before you can have empathy for others.
Yeah.
But that's just not the people who you're managing, but it's actually the people who are different to you as well in life, who have different political views, who have different all kinds of, views, and you can't possibly be open to hearing them or seeing them or understanding them if you haven't gone through that process for yourself. So that was kind of the tumultuous elements that forcing myself to look at myself in that way.
Yeah.
It's always going to be tumultuous though, because there's no script.
Only if you do it properly.
But still, part of the whole process is you're going to make mistakes along the way, aren't you?
Yeah.
And then recalibrate or think about that and then go on a different path.
Yeah.
So I think, that part of it which I got out of it is that, there's always learnings.
100%.
And your book is probably going to help people develop their
I
own
hope so.
tools and everything.
Yes, I hope so.
But it's still, there's elements which that you've still got to adjust and so on during that path.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
How do you, in your own personal experience, how do you bring empathy into a leadership situation, and how do you teach other people? What are the things that you think are the most important when you're going into an organisation, for instance, and starting to talk to the leaders about, again, being able to be empathetic towards yourself before you put that into your teams?
So I think design thinking is a skill that can be taught. I don't think empathy is a skill that can be taught. I think empathy is something that is revealed.
Yep.
And it can be revealed over time, quickly or slowly. Depends how much the person wants to engage in that.
Yep.
So I think everyone is capable of having empathy, certainly for themselves, and being kinder to themselves. But they have to want to do it. And they have to understand that the process can be really very confronting. So I don't think for me, in terms of leadership, it's about teaching. It's about holding the space for them to be able to have those revelations through a curated conversation or through a kind of an activity that allows them to consider their lives and what serves them and what doesn't. Their childhoods, their inner critic, especially for women, that they might have been unconscious of in their childhood, that has affected the way they make their decisions, so that they're their own worst blockers perhaps, or that they're telling themselves something that they're not aware of that impacts the way they view the world or react to things. So these aren't teachings. These are, I would say, more revelations, and that the key is in the ability to hold the space to make people feel comfortable and vulnerable enough to be open to having those thoughts and reflections.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about vulnerability and how that really, if you are vulnerable with your team and with the people around you, then you become a different person to them. They feel you in a different way. Is that your experience with how it works?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to choose a leadership frame, although I don't like the name at all, it would be servant leadership, which is, creating that space and allowing people the time to have that reflection. So some of the things I've done in the past to help curate that kind of environment for my teams or at work is, not having an agenda every time we meet, just seeing what comes out of the conversation, being curious about their lives. You have to share of yourself when you're in that as well. Things like peer-to-peer mentoring, where you give permission for people to go out and have a coffee together instead of them having to try and fit it in around a million other things, where they understand there's a reciprocity that's required. They have to learn from each other what they can give and what they can get from the person that they're meeting. Unconferences where you allow people to come and share their knowledge, which may or may not be 100% directly related to work. A lot of the time it is, but it's not always. Like, I've done that where people have come and done laughing sessions or yoga sessions, which are a big part of who they are that you don't get a chance to reveal. And so, or having prompts around favourite childhood cakes or ice creams, which always has a story and an emotion behind it. And so they're the kinds of things where you need to listen to each other and you need to spend time together and learn about each other, not in an invasive way. You get to choose to share whatever you want to choose to share, but it increases trust, and then that notion of psychological safety reduces psychosocial risk in the workplace and makes people brave enough to say what they think, which is the whole piece around agency, which you need in order to have proper inclusion.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my logic.
Yeah, yeah. It makes a lot of sense, and it certainly is the sort of thing that we do here a lot as well, like bringing people's humanity back into the workplace and not thinking of them as a person who sits at a desk, but thinking of them as a person.
Yeah, you're not just what you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And allowing them the ability to be able to talk about those sorts of things. I love the idea of the your favourite childhood cake. That's a really cool one. Shane's a huge cake fan. So
what's your favourite childhood cake?
Sponge cake.
Yeah.
And did someone make that
Yes.
for you?
Yes, my nana.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and first time I had it was delicious, and it's the best sponge cake I've ever had. And so whenever there's a sponge cake,
it's always a comparison.
Pink icing.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's got to be pink icing. That makes a difference.
Yeah.
Did you watch Nonnas on Netflix?
No, I haven't seen
You have to watch it. It's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
That will resonate very much with you.
Yeah, okay. It's funny how we get those little things. Like the team in here would all know that if they wanted the key to Shane's harder to be through a vanilla slice, it certainly wouldn't be a sponge cake, because that's like the sponge cake is the thing that nobody's ever going to get it right.
Yes,
because it's not Nana's sponge cake. But vanilla slice is always the thing, and ice cream cake for birthdays. And that, again, is because his dad, Shane's dad, was a big ice cream cake fan. Didn't like a cake, but loved an ice cream cake. So that's a good one.
It always comes from somewhere you can learn a lot. Yeah. And, if we were doing that in a session,
yes,
we'd dig a bit deeper into that
yes.
and ask where are they from.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn your family history, and you get a whole perspective on your sense of self and your identity through that process.
Yeah. It's a good one. You and I have talked about the amount of energy and effort that you've put into organisations and talking to them about a couple of things in particular, gender equality and, focus on women, and also then a bit of a focus on marginalised communities and how you can help them and help them in the workplace. Tell me a little bit about, in this context, in the podcast context, because you and I were sitting over coffee and lunch one day talking about it for hours, way more hours than we probably should have that day.
You're in much more of a rush than I was.
I was in a rush that day, but it didn't matter because we were still talking about it. Tell us about what it is that you've done that has created that in you, that empathy, that the desire to be able to bring a bit of yourself to those women, firstly, because obviously we're talking about gender equality is women, and marginalised communities, because they are a big part of what you do too.
They are. And that, again, also is just simply a product of my childhood and my own life experiences. And I think the people who are really passionate about some of these interesting and challenging social issues, it's because of their own lived experience. So first generation Australian, I was the first person in my family to finish high school, let alone get any postgraduate degrees.
Yep.
That sense of otherness has permeated every decision that I've made in my adult life.
Yeah. So what are the things that you are, now that you've come back from Italy, what is the focus for you now, Jackie? What are you going to start? There's obviously got to be a project in the wings. What is it?
There's a few things in the wings. Of course there is. So this trip to Italy has been at the back of actually an adult gap year, if those things exist.
Of course they
exist. Where I
exist.
was in a very fortunate position as a result of my own hard work. There's much, I don't want to,
No,
I wasn't
it wasn't
lucky.
somebody
it was
else.
intentional.
Exactly.
Where I chose to invest my money in myself after a very long time of being at the bottom of the list of priorities in terms of health, well-being, everything really. Not that anyone should feel sorry for me about that. It was all a choice, and this is my choice now. And so I took money I'd saved over the last few years, and I decided to live off that rather than put it in my mortgage or anything else. And I have used it to develop a series of programs coming out of my book. And developed a little ecosystem around design thinking and difference and otherness for individuals, for groups and teams, as well as for organisations. And my logic really stands. I mean, all of the classic philosophers Plato, Aristotle all say that the highest form of wisdom is understanding yourself, and that you absolutely have to understand yourself before you can understand others. And so if we want to live in a world where individuals are more and joyful, and where teams are more are better performing and more efficient, and organisations are aligned with their purpose and their values, which in turn improves their bottom line and what they put out into the world, then empathy, in my view, needs to be the beginning of that process. And then ultimately, of course, that allows for better conversations and harder conversations, so that when we get to some of the challenges that we're seeing more globally or in society, will give people the ability to have those vulnerable, honest conversations by hearing each other and acknowledging that there's room for tension, there's room to hold difference of opinions without tearing each other apart. In all kinds of environments, at home, in the office, Parliament, and the conversations born of empathy are the key, because we all know what happens when there's no conversation inside it. And that's kind of the world we're living in right now. So, for me, that is the work that I've been trying to develop over the last 6 months since I've been on my very overdue gap year.
I have to talk to you about that. I'm liking the idea of a gap year. I'll need to get your experience and expertise on that.
It was awesome. I went to a few conferences. I took 3 trips away. I sorted my house out. I sorted my kids out. Ended a long-term relationship which needed to end, and have put myself out differently into the world. And I think once you publish a book, your narrative changes anyway. And so that's been really liberating and put a huge smile on my face. So that's kind of my journey in otherness and feeling different. The gender-related stuff, obviously, as a mother, as a single mother, as a woman, as a someone who has been very acutely aware of the differences in treatment between me and my peers. As a junior lawyer, it was very blatantly obvious that I was being paid less and being treated differently to my male counterparts. And in the manner I was spoken to as someone who looked quite young and got married very young, and, all of those things. So they have all very much, formed my view of the world around gender stereotypes, around the issues relating to financial independence and literacy, around the barriers that exist for women to equally meritorious people, but one is married and has a young baby. I had once someone for a job I applied for tell me that I reminded him of his daughter, and that I came second in the job selection process. And asked me what I was cooking for dinner.
Oh gosh!
All of the mental load of all the housework. I think in my book I said I calculated, for me it was about to the value of about $100,000 for the calculator. That's a lot of unpaid contribution. And imagine the GDPs of the world. If those were accounted for.
Exactly.
How you feel about yourself, needing to be liked, not needing to be bossy, all those things that we all know about. I do think there is something about being feminine, though, which a lot of women, when they have had to push and stand up for themselves, lose, like the softness around that. And I think there is an ability, if you want to try and balance both. And, addressing all the systemic issues around retirement issues, around superannuation issues, around the care economy, around all the stuff. So that's all, over time and various points I've been involved in advocating for or supporting women through.
Do you think there's been any genuine progress in that respect over the last 10 years?
No.
Okay.
Not any substantive process. Right. I think maybe the conversation has shifted. And there may be on the books a couple of legislative provisions, but really in terms of lived experience, no, I don't think so. I think that stories are key here, and we're still not hearing women's vulnerable stories in the way they need to be told and heard. We're still hearing that they've been so lucky to be so successful, and that they, without hearing what it took to get there or what they gave up to get there. And until those stories are told, like, what it actually took and what it meant, and the bad days, not just the successful days, I don't think that women are going to understand that how hard it is, and they're going to set up to fail without those stories.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept because obviously we've just had a federal election, and I told you before the podcast we weren't going to talk about anything that was political, but we are now because you've brought it up. Before the most recent federal election, there were obviously lots of conversations around equality and equity and gender roles and everything, and working from home was one of those things that was almost scrapped by the political party that ended up not getting a lot of seats in Parliament. They've since had big conversations around how they get to some form of gender parity in their party. They've talked about not wanting to create an environment where women are favoured, for want of a better way of saying it.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of backlash.
Yeah. And as a result of all of that, lots of conversations are now being had. But interestingly enough, there was a conversation that I had with someone where I had said to the person, the leader of the opposition is now a female, and often females are brought in periods of crisis because they are good crisis managers, but then when they don't succeed, everyone says, oh, look, we gave a woman an opportunity and it didn't work out. So, in comes the man in shining armour,
the fall guy
who does the thing.
Yeah.
And that is often a thing in society in general, isn't it? That women
Absolutely.
are brought in because they're good at managing crisis situations, or they're good at getting organisations out of big black holes that they've got themselves into. They're risen up for that purpose, and then a few years later, we've now got another male CEO or a male leader or whatever because the woman didn't work out, and that still happens. So, when Shane asks a question like, are we any better than what we were, probably as you said, in the conversations that we have, we may be better, but we're not actually better, are we?
No, I mean, the gender pay gap is still the gender pay gap.
Yeah.
It hasn't shifted.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it might have become a little worse. And Australia is not, for all of its progressive evolutions, is in this space has not really evolved the way lots of people would have liked it.
Yeah.
It's actually really interesting.
Yeah. And we're still having conversations around the fact that women typically are the ones who are the primary caregiver for their families, which means that they will give up a career, or they will step back from a career so that they can look after the children while they're younger, which means that they then come back into the workforce in a lower paid position. They've lost the superannuation opportunity that they may have had while they were not working. The fact that they have stayed at home and given care, and that is completely ignored from a productivity standpoint and from their own, personal standpoint, all of those things. Then you have elderly parents. You typically become the caregiver for those elderly parents when you become older.
Absolutely.
There's all of these things, and we are, as a firm, actually having those conversations with lots of our people in our networks at the moment about how women can do those things differently and empowering women to make different choices and things. But regardless of us telling them about all of these things, there is still that inherent situation. So,
yeah, there is, and it's partly human nature.
Yeah.
Women often make these enable some, but not always, but they often enable it because they want to do the right thing by their parents and by their children, and they just don't think about consequence that it will have in 5 years or 10 years, or on their sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
Are you optimistic we're going to see tangible change in the next 10 years, say?
Well, when I look at my daughter's generation, who puts up with considerably less than what we might have put up with, I do actually.
Good.
Yeah.
I do, both in terms of how they understand themselves in relationships, how they understand themselves in relation to their superiors at work, and as well as what they want for themselves. But I do think it will come at a cost for them. So I do think things will shift, but I do think that the nature of what they have in their lives, their desire to have children, their willingness to be at home for children, to nurture those children, that might shift as a result. Find out.
Yeah. And, all of those things are really important for society to move forward. Like,
exactly.
you know, we were laughing about this on the weekend, that if childbearing and child rearing was up to men, then the human race would have died out a long
years ago. 100%.
because as you said, and it is a very it's a lot about your nature, isn't it?
It's really interesting. One of the things I was thinking about while I was away was a lot about the nature of motherhood, the nature of the female versus male kind of energy.
Yep.
And I was in Vietnam earlier this year. I was looking at some art, and there was a river and there was a mountain, and the tour guide who was taking us around Hanoi was saying that a mountain represents a father. A mountain represents a father because it's stoic, it's binary, you know, it's strong, it protects you, but it doesn't shift. A river flows. And so I think probably flow is my word from my trip, both internally but also in how I want to be in the world. And a river flows. It has a tide, it comes in and it's out, it moulds to the environment that's around it. And that kind of represents a mother or, you know, a maternal element in Chinese art, or in the piece of Vietnamese art that I was looking at. And that really resonated with me, and I think that's true.
Yeah, it's a good one. These conversations, you know, again, it's about showing vulnerability in a workplace as well. And for us in our workplace, it's about the women here understanding that it's okay to talk about things that you may not have felt comfortable talking about in a previous workplace or with a boss in the past or whatever. And, you know, because these things are what make us who we are. And it's okay for us to be able to say, this is hurting me right now, or this is not going okay right now. And those things are important too. How do you guide women into those conversations? I know, sorry, we're getting very deep into the women conversations, but that's one of Jackie's key areas. So
I think the premise I start off is that we have more that binds us. We have more in common than what we have in different. That, you know, that more than what's different between us at the end of the day, regardless of how much money we have, regardless of cultural or ethnic backgrounds. You know, as just humankind, we have more in common than not. And so finding that commonality is usually the way that I try and find a path into helping people be vulnerable. To open up, and sometimes it's cake. Sometimes it's sometimes it's sport, sometimes it's parenthood. And so, you know, I try and make sure I know enough about what's going on in the world to be able to have a conversation with anybody as an equalizer. And being curious. And asking curious questions. That often brings the walls down in terms of how people respond to me.
You've written a book.
I have.
It's very new too, isn't it? The book, even though you said you've been working on it for a long time, but the actual publication of the book is reasonably new.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about the book and about, you know, the target audience, sort of people who should get online and order a copy.
Oh, everybody should do that.
That's the right answer.
Everybody should do that. So the book really started off as a very angry journal, and it was a little bit of therapy when my children were very young, and I was making some of these decisions that weren't sitting well with me, but that I felt were required to facilitate my maternal instincts. And so I would sit outside my kids' extracurricular activities with my laptop and just splash into the keyboard and take it all out on the keyboard. And after a while, like, it ended up being, you know, hundreds of pages. And many, many words over many, many years. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do with this? And it's fine if it's just a rant, you know, if that's, it was very cathartic. But I also thought, well, maybe there's some learnings in it. Maybe I need to go through it and actually see what the patterns are, what's consistent. So I did that, and it was still a big mess, and I didn't know how to turn it. Even if it was something that I wanted to read for myself or my family, you know, I never knew that I was going to publish it specifically, and that wasn't my sole intention. And then through the work that I was doing in social innovation, I came across human-centered design. And I thought, this makes sense to me. Like, this is an intuitive process that I can apply to myself and the stuff I've written and the stuff that I want to write around how I have made decisions and how I have viewed myself in the world and how I've put myself out in the world and how I have solved problems and how other people might be able to solve the problems that they determine are important to solve for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's basically the process I went through, and it was really cathartic even applying the hundreds of thousands of words that I'd written to a framework because I had to cut a heap out.
Yeah.
It's not a long book. It's not a long read. It's a 90-minute read.
Yeah.
And there are prompts which if you do an exercises that makes it a much longer interaction, but the book itself is not long. And so that's what I did. And that process of trying to align design thinking with my own process meant that I cut out a whole heap of stuff that was baggage.
Yep.
And that was another level of, writing as therapy, which was great. And once I did that, I realised actually I could turn it into something that was publishable and that might – it's not quite self-help because it's really a business framework, but just a different way of looking at things. And the biggest challenge I had in that was thinking about what was the problem that I wanted to solve. And so when you're applying it to your own life – and there are other design books that have done this, but they've largely done it for one component of your life, like design your job or design your relationship or design your parenting or whatever, or your divorce even. This was me about the story I was telling myself as a whole to myself.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this different because it's the internal conversation I was having with myself. And so the question I came up with was, how do I align all of my identities? And I have many, many, as most people do, including gender, including cultural, religious, ethnic background. And I went through a process of like, how are they different? Where do they clash? Where do they no longer serve me? What do I need to let go of? And that was a life-changing process, that part of it, having that question. And over the period of my gap year, I've developed a series of programs that have come out of the book looking at design thinking and empathy, in particular the empathy element of design thinking as the basis for having all those conversations across all the levels of the ecosystem that I mentioned before. And that has been a really rewarding process for me to go through, and I've piloted some of the programs. And so the book is really for anyone who wants to have a framework about how they might think about themselves holistically or even one domain of their life. And it has prompts that you can answer. You can go through the programs have got facilitated exercises, so it's a different level of detail that you go through and analyse yourself. But it's an easy, intuitive process to follow. And just like diversity and inclusion as it currently stands, and design thinking more broadly, there's no right or wrong. It's just learning. And, something doesn't work, you iterate and you try again. There's no KPIs, there's no hard success measures. You're not going to fail at it. And that's the beauty of it.
You're not going to fail at it. That's my takeaway from this conversation. I always try and take one tiny line out of all of the podcasts that we do, and that's the one that I think is really important in this element, is because when you're thinking about these sorts of things, it's important to understand that it's not about failure or success, is it? It's about finding something that is your flow. Like, that is the important part about it, because what you think is successful for you is going to be completely different for me, and how I view the book and how someone else is going to take it and do stuff with it is completely up to each individual, right?
Absolutely. The message of the book, towards the end, is that we have to define our own measures of success. So the traditional notions of success around marriage, around, becoming the partner in the firm or whatever, they're not for everyone. And they shouldn't be for everyone. And if they're for you, great. And good luck to you. But that has not been my experience. In fact, by all traditional measures of success, I'm a dismal failure, except that I'm super happy. And excited about what this next chapter brings.
I think you're being a little harsh on yourself. You've got a PhD after all, so I don't think you're a dismal failure. I might still
have to work on that a little bit. But broadly speaking,
I don't think you're a failure, Jackie.
Thank you. In terms of, I don't have a steady income. I don't have. I'm not in a long-term
You're
relationship.
not driving a Maserati?
No, I got rid of that when I got divorced. It no longer reflected my socioeconomic status. So, it's shifting your mindset about what success looks like,
exactly.
and focusing internally rather than externally, and trying to manifest what allows you to flow.
Yeah, yeah. I think when you talked before, when you answered Shane's question about do you think that the next generation is going to have it better, I think that they may have it better because of those things, because the societal expectations, they're all, the women in particular, young women in particular, like, no, if I have babies, I have them. If I get that great job, that's okay. Like, they're much more in tune with what they want to achieve, rather than thinking about what school tells them they have to achieve. Like, you've got to go and do that degree, and then you've got to do this after that. And then, by the time you get to what you 10-year reunion, you have to have been married by this and have this. So it's less about that, right?
Anymore.
Yeah. Which is a good thing.
It's absolutely a good thing.
What is next for you? Are you going to write more books? Is that
so?
part
I'm
of the
going to
plan?
start a Substack.
Yep.
Which I am doing all my pre-work for that at the moment. I have my programs ready to launch, and I've been waiting for this, to come back from Italy to do that. So in the next few weeks, there'll be an announcement about that. So I'm basically open for business if anyone wants to talk to me.
That's exciting.
I've made it, I've been straddling two worlds for a very long time, which is the professional world where I derive an income, and then just backing myself to put myself out there and just manifest, and hopefully the income will come. And it's a little bit scary in between, but if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it, and I will regret not doing it. So that's kind of how I'm putting myself out into the world. And it's been quite liberating because, when you think about your LinkedIn profile and you're looking for a job and you're also trying to start a business, like, where do you put yourself? And so it's been quite nice to have made that decision. And obviously I'll still need to work for an income, but it's a different agenda.
Yeah, of course.
It's a different agenda. And so hopefully I'll be in a position to start having lots more of these conversations publicly and privately, and we'll see what we can make of it over the next, 6 to 12 months. But it's making me super happy, and I've piloted with about 15 women especially over the last few months, and it has all positively impacted them. And so I'm onto something. I think it resonates.
Individual programs, like where the women
no, there have been group programs. I can do one-on-one coaching too, but there is something really special about that peer-to-peer support and being vulnerable enough to share your challenge or the problem you're trying to solve with other people. But obviously there might be some situations where that's not necessarily appropriate. But the beautiful support that has come out through some of these interactions and on the ideas. Because the whole point is to think differently, right? So part of the design process is to think, if you had all the time and money in the world, how would you solve this problem, or would it be a problem? And you don't always know what the answers to those questions are. And then obviously you have to funnel it down and become a little bit more realistic and ask what's feasible and all the rest. But having people around you who can help you think more broadly about what's a possible solution is actually really powerful. We will share, like we always do, the information about how people can find you, because that's really important.
Thank you.
And so if you can let us know as soon as you've got a website or something.
I've got
like
a website.
Excellent.
I've got a website, drjackieking.com.au.
Awesome. That's super. So we'll get everyone involved in communicating with you. And your Substack, you're going to have some sort of ability for people to sign up to that.
As soon as the jet lag is over,
Yeah.
I will start putting, I'll start putting some things out. I know I'm not as young as I used to be, right?
It does take a little while.
It's taken over a week, I'm
not quite in control of my days at the moment. I'm trying to be kind to myself and just sleep.
I know, that's totally fair as well.
Yeah.
In terms of, so this is obviously how you're going to, be able to afford to do things, go over to trips. But what about for you personally? What's next for you, Jackie? Like, what is the goal for you other than to get these programs up and running? What do you think you want to, what flow are you going to be in, if I'm going to use your words?
Well, I think, what I do on a day-to-day basis is a big part of that flow.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing for me is around those boundaries. And not feeling guilty. So for me personally, they're things that I need to work on with my children, with people that I'm seeing, and understanding that I need to be with the right people in the right place for that flow to occur.
Yeah.
Instead of just doing what's expected.
Yeah, yeah. If you were to give some advice to young people who are listening, because I say young people, but it really is, it's cross-generational, what would be the things, maybe 3 things that you think that people could do to help themselves improve their flow?
So my default answer always to that kind of question is the decision you make about your partner is the most important decision that you'll make in your adult life because that affects how you engage in the world. And a partner where there's competition between the two of you is going to end up being a toxic environment. And so there needs to be complementarity and come in and out of each other's needs and, ambitions healthily. So that's for men and for women, I think, as well. Always, not that I've always followed this, but make sure you don't fully ever step out of the workforce and make sure there's always a little bit of a pocket of funds in the case of a rainy day. And thirdly, just be honest with yourself. A lot of people aren't honest with themselves. Yeah.
It's probably the hardest thing that we can do, isn't it?
It's really hard.
Yeah. We're both the same age. We've had the same sort of, we've both got kids. We've both been in and out of the workforce at various times. And that is probably my number one hardest thing, is to be honest with myself. So I get that. That's a really big one. So.
You know what? Everybody's got, I spoke before about my kids being accountable for their behaviour. We all have to be accountable for our behaviour.
Yeah.
And being consistent with it.
Yeah. So many more conversations that we could have, and we will have. So we will have you back on the podcast again, Jackie, once you've got your programs in place and everything is ready to go, because there are so many things that I think you have to share that businesses and people and community groups and organisations can really benefit from. So we will continue to share, and you and I will continue to talk to each other as well outside of this podcast. But thank you so much for coming on today and for sharing a tiny bit of who you are with us. We really appreciate you coming along, and we will share all of the details about how to find Jackie online, as well as how to find her book and order it. And thank you for listening today. We'll chat again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.